Tuned into Recovery TV, the voice of hope, with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Discussions and information on addiction and mental health issues. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Narcan. Everyone should have one, just in case. Just in case. Everyone should have one. My guest today is Fred Trapassi from AdCare. And Fred is the president, CEO
of AdCare Rhode Island. Yes.
AdCare Rhode Island, and thank you for joining us, Fred. And
Our
also,
pleasure.
Thank you for being a prime sponsor of the show. So, Fred, there's been a number of things going on throughout the state. There's the opioid settlement money coming in. It's coming in like there's no tomorrow. The system as a whole is at a breaking point. Mm-hmm. People are overdosing every day. Every day you pick up the paper, there's something in there. What are you seeing on the street?
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, right? Close to 35 years. We've never seen anything like it before. Because it's not just the overdose deaths, it's the overdoses that lead to hospitalization, emergency room visits, treatment, we hope, at some point in time. But the problem is really, it's out of control. And the fentanyl, the traditional means of detoxification work less and less for those individuals coming to us on fentanyl, and now we've got it compounded with the methamphetamine, some of the other chemicals that are out there that historically have been used for animals in zoos and veterinarians.
Xylazine, yeah.
It's like they're looking for everything and anything, and it's getting bad. The health problems that people come in with, it's just unbelievable.
So let's visit that, the health problems. Mm-hmm. You're not a hospital.
No.
So what do you do with those folks?
Well, I mean, clearly we have a very strong assessment process on the front end.
Right.
So we want to make sure that when they come to us that they're in the proper level of care. Otherwise, we make a referral to a higher level of care. But for those people, it's really just about making sure that they're medication compliant, that we're monitoring them every day to make sure that those problems don't become exacerbated. And we're very conscious of them. They were few and far between 15, 20 years ago. Nowadays, probably every second or third person that comes to us has some type of compounding medical, and certainly we can't leave out mental health. And some have all three, so they come in with the trifecta. So it's a lot of monitoring, certainly increasing the professionals that are in-house with us.
Right.
We used to have a medical director and nurses. Now we have a nurse MP, we have a psychiatrist. So, it's really enhancing all of those types of services to make sure that these people continue to stay safe and healthy while they're with us.
Right.
And then that when they're discharged, that they're discharged to a safe environment and to a caretaker or a medical professional that can serve those needs. And then we hope that they follow up.
Now, when somebody comes in with actual medical issues, on top of being not sober, but being addicted to medicine. Now, do you guys have a relationship with like a South County Hospital, a Merriam Hospital, a Rhode Island Hospital?
So we have very good relationships with a lot of hospitals throughout the state. We tried to start with their PCP and any prescriber that's working with that patient. So we try to get releases of information. We try to, bring in as much information as we can and then coordinate their care with them. So there are a lot of times where people will come to us on medication that is actually appropriate and needed. It could be a benzo. It could be, something for pain. But we'll work in concert with their providers to make sure that they're still getting the appropriate detox. And in many cases, these people can be moved into like a medication-assisted treatment program. So they can be moved onto a buprenorphine product, Suboxone, even methadone for some. But again, we try to take all of that into consideration prior to them even coming into the facility. We have these conversations with them.
So as far as being a residential treatment facility, are you able to get medical records on these folks that come in? Like the state has the medical record of silo, I'll use that word.
Right.
That they can see what John Tassoni has for medical issues. Do you have the same capabilities as doing that?
No. If they're transferred or referred to us from a hospital, we'll always ask for the hospital paperwork, the discharge paperwork. But for the most part, we have to get a release of information from the patient and then pursue that information on our own. or go by what the patient is reporting to us, and they're generally not the best historians of
Right.
that type of
That
reporting.
could
so
be
we try,
dangerous.
absolutely. So we try very hard to follow up. Again, going back to the PCP and other providers, getting a release of information and coordinating their care with them.
Would it make it easier for a residential treatment facility? I know we got 6 or 7 of them that belong to us. To have that information when John Tassoni comes into your facility, you say, give me the last 4 digits of your social security number, boom, and it all comes up. That would save a lot of time.
It would save a lot of time, and if you remember back in the early 2000s when there was a lot of talk about going to an EMR, an electronic medical record, or an electronic health record, that was kind of the promise that we would have access. Leaning on the libertarian side, I see the concerns around people's information and who has access to that information, but it would not only make it easier, I think everyone all around would be able to provide better treatment, because typically those medical providers don't have access to the information from us either without a release of information.
Exactly.
So yes, it would, but I do understand that there are some, confidentiality issues that continue to crop up that I think we need to address. We need to work on.
Yeah, I get it on the libertarian side about being it, but you know what? You're dealing with somebody's life now.
Absolutely.
Enough is enough. I mean, we're losing too many young folks. We're losing a lot of older folks now. Right. They're not getting their pain meds as they need. They're going to the street because they're in agony. We had this conversation a little while ago.
That's the DACA side, right? Of all the work we did to,
right.
Yeah.
So it would make me more comfortable if you guys were able to, the residential treatment people, to get on there and get the information you need, because as we indicated, you get people coming off the street who may be homeless, who are addicted, that are being transferred to your facility. You don't know what's in their background.
Other than what they self-report.
Right.
That's correct.
And a lot of times when they self-report, as you indicated, they're not always telling the truth.
Right. Not the best historians.
But that could put you guys in a pickle.
It does, and again, that's why for the first 72 hours that they're with us, they're monitored very closely. We have what we call safety checks every 15 minutes for the first 72 hours, the first 3 days they're with us. Once they complete their detox protocol, if they step down to residential, those will usually go to either a half hour or an hour. So it's always having eyes on. It's always doing, all of the things that we need to do, running their vitals, talking with them, touching base with them multiple times a day to make sure that what we're observing and what they reported is at least close to being the same or similar. But no, look, I don't disagree at all, John. It would make everyone's life a lot easier. Again, not only from the treatment providers, but from all of the other medical providers. I think we would, even dentists, it would make everyone's life far easier. But we've got to sit down and we've got to address those concerns, because whether you're addicted to drugs or alcohol or not, there are still legitimate concerns about how society views this type of a disease. And
it's getting worse. It's not getting any better.
It really is not getting any better, John, which is surprising. We all thought, that this would
be
have
a
been
wave.
behind us by now.
But now it's a tidal wave instead of a regular wave.
Right.
We're going to take a break, Fred. You're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. We'll be right back with AdCare and Fred Trapassi right after these messages.
Now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. AdCare is in the house today. Mr. Fred Trapassi, who's the president of AdCare in Rhode Island, and you do a little bit of work in Massachusetts?
We do. We have facilities in 7 states, 9 facilities in 7 states.
I hear there's a big addition coming to the
Yes.
Kingston facility?
Yes. So we've been at 59 beds forever. A couple of years ago, we had a small fire on the property, and we decided it was a good time to build out, expand the beds. Certainly they're needed, badly needed in the state of Rhode Island. So we'll be adding 21 beds. It'll make us an 80-bed facility. We're hoping that the completion date will be sometime towards the end of Q2, which would be May or June of next year. And I think it's just going to make a world of difference to the people needing treatment, whether it's on the alcohol side or the substance side. And then we also have, our 3 associated outpatient locations in South Kingstown, Greenville, and now Warwick.
So here's a $64 question.
Sure.
What about help?
It's been a real challenge. It's been a real challenge. The beds, building out the beds has taken longer than we thought for a lot of reasons. First it was COVID, then supply chains.
Yeah.
Now everything, including the work we do every day, is getting hung up. And it's not just us, it's providers across the board, across the country, getting hung up on just the lack of individuals out there that are working in the healthcare space. So, we look at, very important to us, I mean, all of our positions are very important, and they all kind of work hand in glove to really provide that exceptional treatment experience to our patients. But nurses, clinicians, even treatment assistants, very difficult to hire.
In your new space of 21 beds, is it all male, female?
Yes, all of our beds are co-ed, and the way our facility is built, and it's intentional by design, we can change beds within 24 hours if we find that there's more of a need for female beds versus male or vice versa. We can also change our numbers of detox and residential beds, again, depending on need. Each one of our units, right now we have 3 buildings on the property. One is a 13-bed and the other 2 are 23-bed. So one of those 23-bed units is our detox. But at any given time, if the need for residential beds increased and detox was lower, we could change it to 13-bed, and we can do that within 24 hours regardless.
What about first responders, Fred? There's been a lot of need, a lot of talk about first responders. Suicide rate is up.
Yes.
On police and fire. Do you have facilities that
we do.
help out?
We actually have 3 facilities in AAC. One is in Florida, one is in Mississippi, and one is in Las Vegas, and even our Texas facility. All have first responder programs. We've never been able to hit critical mass in Rhode Island to actually dedicate to a unique individual program for first responders. However, we do provide a lot of services to retired first responders and to veterans. We have a fairly significant veteran population that we serve.
Now, the veterans you're talking about, is it more female or male, or is it split down the middle?
I'm going to say it probably follows almost the same ratio that we do with all of our other, all of our other patients. It's probably a 60-40 split. Males being on the 60% side,
Right.
females being 40%. I mean, it fluctuates, but
Yeah.
generally speaking.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk around the country, locally, about first responders and the treatment that they may need, especially with the rise in the suicide end of it. So would that be something that AdCare would be open to?
Absolutely. We've explored that several times over the last 3 or 4 years. Again, we've never had the numbers that allow us to really, commit to a separate curriculum and a separate programming piece just for those folks.
Yeah.
But absolutely, we would, look, you know me, we would do anything for our first responders, for our veterans, police, fire. Typically, they like to go outside of the state that they
Yeah.
live in, but no, I would be more than happy. I would sit down with anyone who would like to discuss that more.
Yeah.
We're going to have the space. We would love to have them, take advantage of that.
So as you know, Fred, we've been friendly for a number of years. One of my big pet peeves is children. And there's nothing in the state for adolescent care. Actually, the Recovery High School has closed. They're no longer operating. Is that something that AdCare would be interested in?
It depends. When I was with my previous organization, we did a lot of work with adolescents. It almost put us out of business. As a matter of fact, it probably was one of 2 contributing factors that did put them out of business. And I don't know what it is. For us, you and I, our children are our most important resource. But we just don't seem to get the same buy-in from the rest of the community when it comes to adolescents. But clearly, I mean, so many of the people that we see now as adults, we could get ahead of that so much earlier in their lives and prevent so much heartache. And with their families, their parents. I mean, what's worse than a parent the death of a child to a parent. I mean, God forbid, it's something that none of us want to
Yeah,
experience.
well, obviously the state needs to take a real big look at this because when you spend a lot of money out of state, you're shipping these kids out of state at the tune of years ago when they testified it was 10 million.
Yeah,
I'm
at
sure.
least. Yep.
I'm sure it's more than 10 million today. But the other flip side of that is there's no family intervention when you have to send a kid to Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, because most of the time they're inner city kids and there's no possibly any way for their parents to get to where they need to be
Right.
for a family intervention. So, you know, we're shoveling it, but we're shoveling it the wrong way. Every dollar that goes around in Rhode Island goes around 7 times. Every dollar that goes in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire goes around 0 for Rhode Islanders. So I don't know what the thought process is and not to get something here in Rhode Island that we can have these kids stay here, get the treatment that they need, get family intervention, because in the long run, as you indicated, they're not going to be in prison, they're not going to be problem children, they're going to get straightened out, go to school, and hopefully become productive citizens.
Absolutely. Absolutely, John.
So what other programs that you may or may not look forward to in 2024?
Well, I think we have to do a lot more around housing, sober housing, maybe even PHP, you know, partial hospitalization, where people can live in a sober house and still go to treatment 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, depending on the level of care. But I think we have to do a lot more on that side. So many people now that we see come to us, and I'm not going to say that they don't have housing to return to, although that is a fact of life right now. But it's not always safe housing. For those that do have housing, it's not the best environment. It's the same environment that they came from. I think we really have to do more in that respect.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that when we come back from break. You're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni, here with Fred Trapassi from AdCare. We'll be right back after these messages.
Now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Just a quick one. Narcan, get it. Go to your pharmacy, you can get it. You need it, call me, we can get it. Fred Trapassi from AdCare is in the house. Fred, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, John.
So, Fred, a couple of things. We talked about workforce housing, we talked about recovery housing, we talked about a number of things. Do you see it getting any better? Not what your hope is, but do you see it getting any better?
I think in some ways, yes. I think, you know, we're getting the word out. We're communicating more about the dangers of drugs. But we're up against, you know, everywhere we turn, you know, the resources that are being put into the fight on the other side, you know, whether it's fentanyl coming over the border, whether it's, you know, it just, there's so much that we have to look at and account for. I don't even see, I mean, quite frankly, people who are able to come in and stay clean today, the struggle has to be much harder than it was years ago for so many reasons. But again, you know, the thing that hangs, you know, that sort of Damocles hanging over everyone's head is with this new drug, fentanyl, not new, but, you know, newer drug, fentanyl, you only have to do it once and you die. You know, it was never like that in the past. You know, you might have a heroin overdose once, you know, twice, you'd hear about it. This is completely out of control, and it seems like nothing's being done
Fred,
to
thank you
stop
for
it.
joining us today.
Yes.
Quick, give us a telephone number to get a hold of AdCare.
401-294-6160 or toll-free 1-800 Rhode Island Sober. You can always go to our website, www.adcare.com.
Fred Trapassi, AdCare, thank you for joining us today. You've been watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. We'll see you next week.